About writing regular fiction, they're basically talking about if you're from New York, your stories are going to always be better if you write about New York because you know New York. You know the streets, you know what goes on in the daytime, you know the rhythm of the life there. You know, I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, and just recently I started writing stories based on it. And, you know, it brings a unique flavor to it because I grew up there, I know that area. But what about when you're writing fantasy and when you're writing science fiction and when you're writing superhero stories? You say, well, okay, I got to write what I know. That's the beauty of writing fantasy stuff because you create that world. So you're going to know that world before you even sit down and write the story. You're going to know everything about it. But it has to make logical sense. If you're going to write a story about superheroes, then when I read that story, I need to feel like this world exists. I need to feel like everything makes some type of sense. And sometimes that takes a little detail. Sometimes, like what I do in Sword to Soul, I base all of my stories on African history and culture. And I did a lot of research, starting back in the 1990s. I grabbed every kind of book on African history I could find. And I read it, I learned about different tribes, different countries, different cultures, different religions. And all that research was the basis for the book that I write now. And so if you read a story by me and it has that depth to it and has that feel to it, it's because of the history and the research that went into that. So basically I'm educating myself, learning what I need to learn to be able to write a story based on this kind of thing. And you want to do that. If you're going to write a cop story, you want to do some research on police procedures and how they work. So when you write it, it's going to come across authentic. If you're going to do something about a fireman or something like that, it's the same thing. You know, do the research, you know, learn it, so when you sit down and write, you will be writing what you know. Okay, let's talk about the other thing I was mentioning a little bit, the revision. Some people say writing is revising, basically. This is when you go back and fine-tune and do your corrections and do different things like that. And a lot of things that you learn in your writing classes, this is when you apply it. I took a writing class that almost prevented me from writing because I had the class and they started talking about, okay, character development. You need to know about your character. You know, you need to know everything about your character. You need to know everything about your setting. After I took that class, every time I sat down to write a story, I just froze because I started asking myself all these questions. Okay, where was the character going? All kinds of stuff like that. And it just kind of killed me. And that's when I got back and started looking at the fact that you just need to get the story down first. It's in the revision when you start looking at all the details. That's when you start working in all the things that you learned in your class to make sure that your story is a solid story and that it's going to be one that people enjoy. Some of the four main things that you're looking at when you're doing revision, and this is just my outline, so people may add more to it. You're looking at your plot. You're going to look at your theme. You're looking at your character, and then you're going to look at your editing. And when you talk about plot is simply what is your story about? You know, what is the story about? I'm going to use examples for some of my stuff because you know I know my stuff and stuff like that. But I'm going to use a novel that I have in work. I have a novel that's in process now called Faith in the Temple. And the Faith in the Temple is about a priestess who discovers that there is this demon that has been gone for thousands of years and has returned. And it's her job to find this demon and get rid of it. That's the plot of the story. Your plot may be a superhero plot. You know, it might be about a young boy who grew up in the suburbs that in some kind of situation found himself with power. And what he's going to do now is use those powers to fight the bad guys. It's a very basic type of plot. It's something that you find a lot in superhero type stuff. Now, I had to give you an ONYXCON story, but we don't have much time, so I'm not going to get into that part. Now, theme. Theme is something that's a little deeper. Theme is something that can really be almost described in a few words. Theme is what I call the core of your story. It's what your story revolves around. Theme is something like good always triumphs over evil. It's very simple. And that's going to be the core of the story. Even though your plot may be about, like in the instance of my story, the plot may be about this woman that has to find this demon and has to destroy him. What is the core? What does this story revolve around? What is the heart of the story? the heart of this particular story is about faith. And all the characters in this story are, what they do is determined by their faith or their lack of it. And the truth in this story is basically saying that, when you lose your faith, you lose your power. That's basically what's going on in the story. And each character in this story goes to their particular development based on that whole concept. If you look at anything, when you look at stories that you enjoy, there's always a theme behind it. And that's really big in Hollywood. And this kind of relates to scripts because when you write a script that's for a screenplay or a movie, it's like writing a script for a comic book, the same thing. And they even have a theme as well. One of my perfect examples is like Lord of the Rings. The plot of Lord of the Rings, you had the ring came up from Saruman, and then you had the team picked out, and they had to go deliver the ring back to the volcano so they can, kill Saruman. That's the plot. But the theme behind Lord of the Rings was about friendship. Basically, they were saying that you can do anything if you have good friends. And the whole story revolves around that because when you think about it, I guess, and usually sometimes they actually have one character that exemplifies that whole thing. And in Lord of the Rings, that character was Samwise. Because Samwise was a friend. I mean, this boy almost drowned so he could stay with Frodo. When Frodo got to the point where he couldn't walk anymore, Samwise put Frodo on his shoulders and carried him. And then he had the other friends coming. He had Legolas. He had all the other guys that was actually sticking with him because they had that friendship. So the whole movie basically revolved around that theme of friendship. I usually find that when I'm working on a story and and the story's not working for me, and it's just I'm not excited about it, and I usually realize that's because I haven't really decided what this story is about. What is the theme behind that story? What's making all these characters do what they do? And that I guess the reason I'm dwelling on it so much is because to me that's a very important aspect of your story. And I think it's really what takes your story from being a generic story to being something that's personal to the person that's reading. Because even if they don't realize the theme behind it, even if they don't understand what it's about, they can feel it because it's what gives the story focus. I want to use another one as an example, and some of my other stories so fans know about that. I'm a big fan of Charles Saunders and his Immoral stories. And the thing that distinguishes Immoral from some of the other sword and sorcery stories is because Immoral has this sense of alienation where he doesn't fit in. And Immoral is constantly looking for this family. He's looking for a place where he belongs. And that kind of drives you through the entire process of Immoral, through all his novels. In the end, there's always a situation where whatever he does, whatever he's involved in, he's always kind of looking for a family. And so, to me, the theme of this story would probably be like the importance of family and what seeking that type of relationship would drive a person to do. He's constantly wandering. He's not just wandering just to go around and find adventures and kill monsters and stuff like that. He's looking for a family. He's looking for someplace where he belongs. And it comes through when you really look at the story and understand it. And again, that's why I feel like the theme is so important. Okay, let's move on because I can talk about things forever. But